Welcome to BCSR, Blackchibisan Radio from the edge of the abyss. And I am your host, Blackchibisan, and welcome to my podcast. Now, you guys know that I have seen some stuff over the start of this YouTube channel to the end of this YouTube channel, and I've seen things before then, from the start of my last YouTube channel to this one. So, I have quite a few things that I like talking about, that are a part of my history and a part of my life. And today we are going to be talking about, well, frankly, I'm not entirely sure, so we're going to start with a channel update, while I surf the web quietly in the background, looking for a story truly worthy of this channel and who I am. The overall update is going to be as simple as saying that I've been practicing and I actually will have the LP ready in 10 days. So, on the 19th of January, expect a return to form with the first ever completed LP on this channel. Or second, I can't actually remember if Super Mario Crossover was on this of the two channels. So that's going to be going back to form. I want to continue with On the Page at some point, though I imagine I'll turn it more into an editorial format for this channel than making it its own little side project, and just do it as I can. Other than that, I intend to then pick up an LP from there, and I'm not quite sure which one. Since I am currently down my recording software and my consoles, it would have to be something I could do over the computer, and I've been planning something in particular, but I'm also very worried that by the time I'm completed with that particular plan, it's not gonna matter. So we'll figure it out. Let's see here. It's time for gaming news. Now, actually, I don't have to, because I just remembered something. I had a thought a while back. Mind always goes blank when you do these recordings. But the thought I had a while back was about Bethesda. And it breaks my heart, because those of you that have watched this channel know I'm a sucker for the Elder Scrolls series. How could I not be? It's probably one of the most free, open world kind of situations in every single one of the Elder Scrolls games. From what I hear, it even carried over into ESO, though that could be negotiated. It sounds like the freedom you have in ESO is similar to the freedom you had in Oblivion, which to me means BS. But that being said, Bethesda is a studio I've admired for a very long time. But now they've started messing up. And I go, okay, well that's fine. And then I remembered BioWare was a company I admired for a very long time. And then they were gutted by EA. And I'm beginning to wonder if that's just what's been happening now. Anybody who has a passion for creating knows that as soon as you enter that world of turning profits for your shareholders, the shareholders and the business people hold all the power. Is that good or bad? Well, it depends on what your goal is. Frankly, it's quite clear that a lot of these companies are more intent on trying to make money than they are about making something good. And so I want to make this particular podcast basically pleading with people to return to the old formats. And I don't mean, no, I'm not a hipster. I'm saying that, think about it. In the old formatting, let's go all the way back to the original PlayStation era. If a game was released that was glitchy and bugged, we kind of expected it because the 3D technology was still new, but it came that way. There was no update patches, so when a game was broken, it was broken, and we could all point and laugh, and there was no defense for it, because it got rushed out, and the company in particular was liable. Now, we have people trying to say, it's like, well, it started off glitchy and broken, but what do you expect for early access? It's like, yeah, I expected nothing of early access, but I got onto the early access for Starbound. I did, because I thought Starbound was going to be like Terraria, but in space, with cool, interesting, weird stuff just everywhere. Like eyeball trees, and UFO penguin things, where I can make my own arenas to fight them and everything. And it has since changed dramatically. And I no longer play Starbound, because it changed from what it promised me into something else. And I can't blame them for how they changed it. It's just not my sort of thing. So, that's one thing. But then you take that same principle, people who got onto the beta, the early access for Fallout 76, and yeah, they knew it was glitchy, yeah, they knew it was bugged, yes, they knew there was lots of troubleshooting to have happen. But they didn't sign up for something that you have to pay to sustain. And some people might still try and argue, but that's what they did with their patches. Is they slowly tried finding the balance where they wouldn't get yelled at by people for making it pay to win, and then they made it pay to win. And they cut corners on the pre-order things because they wanted to try and turn as big a profit as they could. Look at what they did to the Battlefront series, and I'm not talking about the loot box conspiracy. I'm talking about the mere concept of getting upgrades for your character through purchases. Look at what EA did to Mass Effect 3, where until the extended ending patch, which by my count is the last thing BioWare did as BioWare, before that, you had to pay for the online gaming pass to play online to get your strength high enough to get a proper ending. We will get into my theories on the Mass Effect series another time. Not just where it went wrong, but in general. But think about it. Back in the original Xbox era, when Xbox Live was brand new, yes, we had some DLC. Yes, we had various things that came through there. But all that DLC was just very limited, and you could still, even to this day, you can still play the games and not be hindered by it. I have a Jade Empire in my collection, and I promise you, there are certain things that are locked off unless you had certain things like the special collector's dish. Unless you had stuff like that, but it didn't change anything. It added some new stuff, but it didn't change the game. It was still a sound game. It was still good characters, good writing. And I'm beginning to realize that that's what the business does. That's what every business does. The deeper you get into it, the more people in corporate, or of a corporate mindset, that are looking for success, that are looking for profit, are going to push you to try and make more. And the reason why is because shareholders don't care what your company's doing. They care about the stock price continuing to go up. Because if they don't see it go up as much as they would like, they will fear that your company is starting to fail, and they will start selling stock. And when they sell stock, your company's value goes down, and you are left holding the bag. That's the problem. You suddenly become at the mercy of people who don't care what it is that you do, or that you are routinely bringing in profits at all. Add on top of that the ongoing outrage culture where if you are not willing to listen to the mob that doesn't even have shareholdings, but has control enough over media to get a buzz of negativity around your thing that could kill your company or your product, suddenly you have to listen to the shareholders who are echoing the voices of these people who don't play your games for fear that you will have negative publicity that will destroy you because you will be culturally ostracized. And on top of that, you have the other direction, your fans basically asking that you don't change anything, or at least that you don't ruin what you already have going for you. So do you want to turn a profit off your fans and risk becoming an ostracized company that gets destroyed by bad publicity? Or do you aim for the good publicity and throw your fans under the bus? And that's where we're at right now. We are at a stage in gaming where you either throw your fans under the bus and try and sell them out for profit before you explode, or You stand by your fans and risk being run into the ground by outrage mobs. And there are some companies that take one direction, some that take the other, but in this current climate, I'm predicting that we are going to have a gaming bust, where all the big companies are going to stop turning profits, their stocks are going to go through the floor, because they're trying to sell out their fans to satisfy these people that have no interest in what they do, just to try and make money before they explode, and that is going to cause them to explode faster. They are not turning into the skid, they are just fishtailing their way down the road. And this is why I say return to the old forms. Return to games that had to be released complete. There was no way to download a patch. Go to older computer games. Go to older console games before that era was common. Look at Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5. It was a disc that had the first level in the tutorial, and then they patched the rest of the game in via download. When the servers go down, do you think that game is still going to be any good, even with the full content being fantastic or whatever, or mediocre, whatever it turned out being? Do you think after the servers go down, after these companies go under, do you honestly think that game will still be available to you? Do you still think all those updates will still be available to you? If you like a game because the DLC made things better, like I am about Mass Effect 3, I think the DLC made it better, you should probably make sure you have that DLC for now. Because there may come a time when that won't be an option anymore. So make sure you have that DLC all downloaded and all linked to your gamer profile. Make sure your gamer profile is safe and sound on that hard drive and able to run without being online. Because I promise you, you will come to a point in time where none of that will matter anymore. You won't have access to that DLC for re-download, and it will all disappear. And that's a travesty. It really is. But I'm sitting here weighing, do I think my DLC is worth saving at the cost of the entire games industry? And I don't know if it is. We have a whole lot of indie devs underneath that will make sure gaming is always around. We have people like Toby Fox, who, if he keeps getting ticked off at people because they aren't listening to him, sorry, Toby, that keeps happening to you. If we have things like that keep happening, then yeah, maybe some indie devs that we know will disappear, because they're mad, and rightfully so. But I honestly believe that what we have going on here is not so much a failure to communicate, so much as a lack of concern for one's customers. When I was young, and it still gets thrown around, there was always the old argument of the customer is always right. But now we have this thing of, if the customer is always right, but we don't like what the customer has to say, we'll claim the customer is a bigot. And it hurts my heart, because for the most part, that's not the case. But it also hurts my heart because we have gotten to that point. In the early stages of gaming, a company could live or die based on how gamers received their games. Now we're at the point in time where the game companies no longer care what gamers think about their games. They care about what everybody thinks about their games. And so it doesn't matter if the person's buying it or not, it just matters what their opinion is. And since more people are not gamers than are gamers, we are getting to the point in time where our voice is no longer enough to hold power over our own genre. The same thing is happening to comic book fans. The same thing is happening to animation fans, to be fair. All of us nerds are getting drowned out by people who aren't nerds but like to think they are. And it breaks my heart, because I hate giving that much power away to companies. Because back when our word, the people who actually bought these things, mattered, we got to give real feedback and influence these companies by them going, if we don't please these unpleasable fanboys, then we have a problem. And that was the one time where we weaponized the most annoying and toxic among our groups, because it was like, okay, most of us are not that vocal, but these people are particularly vocal, And if they speak up first, all of us will back them up on the parts they're right about. And it was like, so you always had that pressure from the annoying toxic fanboys, but you knew there was an actual problem if the rest of the fans joined in. And even now, we have people to the hilt defending The Last Jedi, and I'm not saying it's terrible. I'm not. My frustration as a fan of Star Wars is that they baited me in with things that, as a fan of the series, I was like, oh cool, are they actually going to bring that into the movies? And then they proceeded to effectively spit in my face. They taunted me with all these things, and every single time they almost got there, it would be an about face. Every single step of the way, they would get right to the edge of doing something amazing and fantastic, and then they would turn around and go, yeah, psych, we're not doing that. And you can't do that to a guy like me. You can't. Because I'm a fan. And when I'm a fan and you taunt fans like that, when you bait and switch fans with plot points they actually came to see, fans will rage. This is why The Last Jedi was terrible. If you had followed through on everything you had teased in the trailer, and it was still a bad movie, we'd go, well, it's just mediocre. It's no worse than the prequels, because at least what it did wasn't the most atrocious thing ever. I'm looking at you, Metachlorians. No. We were sitting there waiting for this stuff to happen, and even if you had done it poorly, we would have been passably okay with it. Would have went, at least they tried. But you purposely about-faced on these things. I'm willing to bet, had you delivered on every single other thing you promised in the trailer, we wouldn't have even cared about the light-speed ramming maneuver. We wouldn't have. Because, yeah, it raises a lot of questions, but we would have went, that's just a hilariously dumb thing. Everything else was okay. It's whatever. But no, because of every single other thing, every fan went, I am going to prove this movie is terrible by tearing apart the one indefensible scene and explain to people why it's the dumbest thing ever. Because apparently, if I criticize anything else, I'm a part of the problem. And this brings me around to the biggest complaint people who aren't nerds come across, so those of you who are nerds, feel free to filter out of the room, come back in, I don't know. I really don't. Feel free to stay if you want, I'll let you out, the people who aren't nerds. The idea that nerds are exclusive to, that we exclude anybody based on anything they look like is just objectively wrong. We exclude based on how nerdy you are. If you are not nerdy enough, you are not welcome. However, if you are a nerd of a group that you are not a part of, you are welcome to join us, but we openly expect that you're going to feel out of place because you're not nerdy in the way that we're nerdy. This is why nerddom is not a singular term, but all nerds unite. Because everybody that is a nerd knows how important it is to have a passion for your passion. And so when we see somebody else from a different circle we may not understand, giving very detailed reasons as to why something isn't going to work, it doesn't matter if you're a motorhead, it doesn't matter if you're a sports nerd, it doesn't matter if you're a gaming nerd, it doesn't matter if you're a comic book nerd, it doesn't matter what kind of nerd you are. If you are a nerd, you recognize a nerd explanation, and suddenly realize, I may not understand this, but I am a nerd and I can tell this is a nerd explanation. So, I assume people who understand this stuff need to understand it's not that we are excluding anybody. We exclude people that don't get it. And if you're not a nerd sort, then you're not going to get it. I'm sick and tired of these histrionic sociopaths trying to pretend they're the victim because they aren't allowed to be the center of attention in a field that they have only a passing interest in. You have a passing interest in getting your way, you do not have a passing interest in other people. This is why nerds hate you. It isn't because you're this, that, or the other thing, it's because you're a sociopath that does not actually care about what we care about. We can take one. Film nerds are one of my favorite ones for this one. Do you know how many film nerds gush over all these old movies that some of which have not aged well, but the story and the framing and all those skills, they set the foundation. They did all of these things well for their time, and these film nerds are still learning how to recapture that magic using modern film techniques. And some people who don't know a thing about film can take a look at something like Citizen Kane and go, this is boring though. There's lots of talking and lots of pausing, and it's really quiet, and it's in black and white, and it's like, yeah, but it's a good film. And that's the thing. There are people, I know it's hard to believe, people who are stuck up, but yes, there are people who think Citizen Kane isn't a good movie. I am not one of them, but I've met them. And when they explained themselves, and I really sat and thought about it, I went, they're not wrong, but I don't care. And that's what it means to be a nerd. Sometimes you love something even though it hasn't aged well, because it did a lot of cool things, and it was awesome, and it is well done. It's just not current. They didn't have what we have now, but without them, we wouldn't have what we have now. One of the ones I know I'll get flack for, but I stand by this. The original Final Fantasy VII. I know, I'm already hearing it in the comments. The original Final Fantasy VII is okay. It's not great, it's not terrible. It's an okay RPG. It's not the greatest thing to ever happen to man. And I know this is coming from me, who loves Legend of Dragoon, which... that's not why I'm hating on it, guys. No, why I prefer Legend of Dragoon. I don't think it's the better game, because there's a lot weird about it. I'd put them roughly in the same category of good. Legend of Dragoon I prefer because it tried doing a bunch of things unique to it. So much so that one Final Fantasy game in particular tried copying it. And nobody liked that, because it wasn't the centerpiece. It was just a little thing they threw in on the side, and it was pointless. But in Legend of Dragoon, all these pieces came together and made something interesting. And that's why it continues to live on in the cultural zeitgeist, is because it did interesting things. Legend of Dragoon is not a good game. It has translation issues, it doesn't look pretty anymore. It looks like cardboard cutouts painted with watercolors. It's just, But I love the game. I do. Hands down, no questions asked, that is probably my favorite JRPG of all time. That having been said, I get it. But if you aren't enough of a nerd to get why we are so fiddly about our craft, if you don't understand why there is nerd outrage, stand back, listen to how we are reasoning it, and realize that none of the things that you think are happening are happening. We didn't dislike Rey because, female characters in Star Wars aren't being paid attention to, that's why Kelly Marie Tran got kicked out. No. Kelly Marie Tran left Twitter for reasons that were unrelated that I don't remember right now. I'll look it up while I continue. But it's one of those things that... why she left... it's one of those things that let's see here. We have Ahsoka, we have Leia. I don't care what anybody says. Even in the first movie, Leia was badass. And if you want to try and say Rey is the first female strong character in Star Wars, you need to get the hell out of the room. Then we have Bastila from the extended universe. Oh, and let's not forget, who else should I list off? Because there's Handmaiden, there's Mira, there's the Cathar lady I can never remember the name of until I have her in my party. I feel so bad because I actually do like her character. Then there's Revan, which I personally prefer to think is a female, but canonically is male. But that's fine. Because then we can go, hey, that let's instead focus on the Exile, which is even more badass than Revan, which is canonically female. Let's talk about Mara Jade. Let's talk about Jana. It's either Jaina or Jana Solo, Han's kid in the books. Let's talk about all these things where it's like we have these strong female characters in our Star Wars. And ain't nobody talking up about that except Star Wars fans, because we know. And guess what? All of those characters got, except for like Ahsoka and Leia, all of them got declared non-canon at the start, and now I'm beginning to realize why. But do you see how by doing that, by trying to say something we already kind of assumed, because we don't need to be told that the books aren't canon until they are. We like to think they're all canon. We all secretly know they aren't. We didn't need to be told. Because unless what the movie says conflicts with it, nobody actually cares, and only the most toxic and painfully particular actually complain about that. No, that's not the problem. The problem is that as soon as you said that, you basically poked at those of us that were entirely okay hanging out in the extended universe. And then you got us upset. Because we're like, yeah, of course we knew that. You don't have to tell us. Why the heck would you do that? So I went to see A Force Awakens just to see why the hell they would tell me that. And there was nothing in there that offended me as a fan of the extended universe. Yes, it was a bit of a retram of A New Hope, but we kind of needed something like that. Because we needed to establish that somebody knew how to write a Star Wars story. Because George Lucas, bless his heart, he does not actually know how to write Star Wars all on his own. He needs people to call him out. The prequels weren't the worst thing ever, but I will openly say that as a child that was excited to see Episode 2, when it came out, I fell asleep in the theater and left massively disappointed. And I fell asleep in the theater at the climax, after the clones had arrived. Like right about the time, I think it's Padme gets pushed outside the side of the transporter. That was about where I fell asleep. And you'd think that would be cool and everything, because there was all these laser swords and fighting and shooting, and it's like, no. I was out. That was the worst Star Wars movie I had ever seen, and I don't care what anybody else says. Episode 1, harmless. Episode 2, terrible. Episode 3, passable. But it's that thing where it's like, we have lots of female characters. But Kelly Marie Tran's Rose was written like a fanfiction character. Which, the more I hear about these people that are in that camp of we need more women because diversity, the more I hear about the writing styles of writers that are in that camp, the more I realize that is what Rose is. Oh, I'm going to pull from my D&D campaigns. That's fine, just don't tell us. Oh, I'm going to pull from this, that, and the other thing that I did over here. I'm going to pull from my own experiences. It's like, well, when you pull from your own experiences, you have a self-insert. When you have a self-insert, it's hard not to want to make a romance for them. Because everybody wants to feel like they have a place. And instead of just making a character that serves a purpose for the story, they start by making a character that has a personality they like. And they don't think about how they fit into the story, they just make a character they want to see in it. And that's how we end up with Rey's. I personally have nothing against Rey. I think she needs to be written more as a character and less like a walking plot device. Because Rey has a lot of potential there. See, one of the things in the extended universe that's established is that the Force has an odd influence on people. It is entirely possible if somebody is immensely receptive to the Force, like Revan was, they can excel in the Force faster and better than anybody else. And one of the theories I had with my stepbrother, and one of the ones they almost kind of confirmed in The Last Jedi, is that through all of the Star Wars fiction, there seems to be the Force is constantly seeking to balance itself out. Too much light on one side causes the dark side to grow in power to meet it. And, in return, whenever the dark side gets too powerful, the light has a champion that rises to meet it. And so it's this idea that the Force is always seeking to be in balance. if it's always seeking to be in balance, then yes, killing off all those Jedi, falling to the dark side, and worshipping a Sith Lord effectively, while Luke drops off the map, something would need to rise to take the place in order for the Force to be balanced. But if Rey had become a true Jedi, or a gray Jedi, because I put them in the same camp, but apparently they aren't the same thing, if she had become a gray Jedi or a true Jedi, truly balanced between the light and the dark, then, and that happened in The Last Jedi, we could have had not only opened the concept of Jedi up to any character in any future movie, like she could train, and then in the future anybody could become a Jedi, and that would have been cool because it means anybody could just go, "Papa! Force powers and laser swords!" And we wouldn't know just by whether or not they used that which side they were on. That would be cool. Instead of doing that, they went, psych, she's still a light side Jedi, she's gonna be the next Jedi, she's gonna be the best Jedi, and Kylo Ren is gonna be the ultimate Sith Lord, ha 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 ha. Instead of giving her a parentage that would make that matter, it's, nope, she's just the daughter of a drunkard, which still could have worked if you made her a true Jedi. It's like, the Force could tell that because of all the stuff that she went through being abandoned and all that she would be, like, she became very receptive to the Force in all of her time on a dead planet. Because that's what Jakku is. It's a dead planet filled with Force stuff around her. Like, because the Force focalizes around areas of great stigma and things of the like. At least that's dark side, but you know what I mean. The Force focalizes around areas like that. And so she could have been resistant to the dark side because she's been on any form of actual explanation. But instead they robbed us of all explanations as to how Rey got where she was. Because Rey don't need no man to define her. Killed off their Sith Lord character, while having Kylo Ren continue to act like a petulant child. The only redeeming quality he had in that whole movie is that he didn't pull the trigger in killing his own mom. Which, by the way, I don't care if they had all those scenes paid for and done. They could have reshot some of that stuff, because with Carrie Fisher having died, her being shot into the vacuum of space and dying there, regardless of what you think of that scene, would have narratively been more important to the story than anybody lets on. And I think a lot of Star Wars fans have thought about this. That would have been the perfect way to end the character, even if they had originally planned on saving her despite that. And having her come back and try and save her son because of that. It's like, oh, I sensed that you weren't going to pull the trigger. They could have just offed her right there, and it would have narratively meant more. But they didn't. No, can't have that. Have to have strong female characters that don't need no man. While trying to make Poe look like an idiot. While in the meantime making the female commander that took over instead look like an idiot. Because there is no reason for it to have been written the way it was. It was poorly written because it was trying to trump up all of the... Maybe I shouldn't use that term, but I will anyway. It was trying to trumpet up, there, that makes it better, trying to trumpet up all of these other characters, and the storyline you wanted to tell, Rian Johnson, instead of actually telling a story first. Instead of thinking about the story, its flow, its narrative, and what matters, you got two of your characters off on a wild goose chase that ultimately didn't matter and nearly got them killed because they were on the ship when things went horribly wrong. But then you also got rid of a really cool, personal moment by having... I'm going to call Rose yourself, insert Ryan. You wish to be an Asian woman. That's what I'm assuming now. You instead had yourself insert save Finn from an actually heroic death that might have meant something. He finally left his history behind him, and you had yourself insert deny him a actually dramatic death that I guarantee they will never capture. Even if they have him and Phasma go against each other, it won't matter. You blew his one chance at a dramatic, meaningful death. Also, you could have these other moments happen. And it's like, we're going to show how toxic masculinity is, by having Kylo Ren blindly shoot at a Jedi Master with massive guns for way too long, and then not understand that he isn't actually there, even though he's well trained in the Force. Do you not see how this is the dumbest thing? Of course you don't, because if you did, you wouldn't have filmed it and put it out there. And this is my stance. We are at that stage where nerds are being ignored because their complaints are being written off as harassment. Their complaints are being ignored, and by doing so, they become more angry. You are angering your entire fan base because instead of listening to people who know the series and just want to see it be good, you do this lazy stuff and then hide behind shields that don't make a difference. I am a writer. I have written characters from every background, from every single direction I can think of, and there are certain genres I'm terrible at, so I try not to write in them. But I have made a character of almost every single variety in my time writing stories. And do you know what? I've ultimately learned that what role a character plays in the story is more important than who the character is. And consistency is second to that. So it's like, okay, we need a character to do this. So who are we going to put there? Well, since we know what we want the character to do, let's go to the second thing of who would be most consistently likely to do this. When you do these things, you create continuity, you create character arcs, all of these things go together. And that's a part of the problem with you guys. You create two-dimensional characters meant to serve useless roles in the story that go ultimately nowhere because you care more about who the character is than the story. If you write a good story, your characters will be good within the story, because the story is good because we care about the characters. If you put the characters first, your story will be crap and nobody will care about your characters, even if you do flesh them out, which, by the way, you did not, Rian Johnson. So no, your story is still terrible, because it's filled with poorly written characters doing stupid things for an hour and a half. That felt more like 4. Because it's like, oh my god, really? The one character you had, DJ. DJ was the only good character in that movie. Because he represented exactly what the fan base, has known for a while in Star Wars, thanks to the Extended Universe. That as long as there is war, there will not be balance. If light and dark are constantly fighting, then there will never be peace. So, what do you do about that? Be smart, don't join. He had the right of it, and yet you completely brushed him under the rug and tried painting him as a villain, when he is probably the closest thing to Han Solo you've had in your entire stories. That's why Han Solo didn't join in to the first battle at the Death Star at first. He came back because his friends needed him, and he felt like crap for dodging them. And it wasn't because he cared about the Empire, it's because he cared about his friends. This is why even when you see him in Empire Strikes Back, guess what? He's still basically like, dude, I'm here for my friends. He's working with the rebels, but he's mostly just working with Luke and Leia. He's working with them because he knows they're involved with this and he wants to make sure they're okay. And he wants to help them accomplish what they're doing. Han Solo is a rebel, not because he believes in the cause, but because he believes in the people he cares about, who support this cause. And that's my stance right now. And that's the part that bothers me, is we're at this stage where media is just so caught up in harassment and defending people, not because of what they've done, but because of who they are, that we aren't going anywhere anymore. We aren't moving forward. We are actually attacking people who insist on moving forward, while we get lazier and lazier and slip into oblivion. Well, I think that's up for my time today. This has been BCSR, Radio from the Edge of the Abyss. This has been Blackchibisan, your host, and I hope to see you all the next time I decide to broadcast. Bye-bye.